Real quick, I wanted to talk about a problem that you could potentially run into in Blender. I'm thinking that it's a bug, but I'm not completely for sure. It's definitely something that is annoying. So we had talked about adding a multi-res on here to up the resolution. But one thing that I found is if you add the multi-res and you come back, so if we come in here and add the multi-res, we subdivide this, even if we turn this off and we start editing things, so we start moving things around, a lot of times when we go back into object mode, now it didn't happen here, but I've seen it a lot just working on these spikes, is your vertices will just shoot off into the middle of nowhere, and it's really hard to correct it. So one of the things that I would suggest, at least until they get it fixed, is do not add your multi-res if you're going to go into edit mode and just start moving stuff around. Especially if you're going to be using just the lower, where the modifier's like not really there. It'll cause a mess. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't, but when it does happen, it takes quite a bit of time to fix. Especially if you go through and you're sculpting and you're moving verts around, you won't notice it. You come back out after you've done all that work, then you realize that, 6 of your vertices have shot off into the middle of nowhere, and you have to go through and fix that. You can't use undo really because you might have done 70 to 100 operations during sculpting. So one thing that I would suggest that you do is don't add the multi-res until you've got everything moved around. So on this one, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work a little bit because there's a couple other things I want to talk about. And after we get things moved around, then we will add the multi-res and go from there. So one of the things that I've noticed on this, it's very low poly, so I really don't have enough geometry here. The multi-res would add geometry, but that doesn't help me in the edit mode. So one of the things that I was doing was I want to pull these in a little bit more, something like that, just to make the spikes a little bit more pronounced, a little less fat. And this is the part that I was talking about. If you have the multi-res on there and you start moving this stuff around, one of the things that you're just going to find is it will shoot off into the middle of nowhere, and it's just a real pain. So this is really thin, and when you start moving things around, if you're not careful, you won't see that you might make it really, really thin. And then when you go into sculpt on it, you can actually end up pulling them from the other side, and then it'll just keep going back and forth. So one of the things that I do is I'll come in real close or at an angle and just raise these up a little bit. They need to be raised anyway, so it's not like this is a useless step. I increase my strength a little bit. There we go. But yeah, I will just come in, raise this stuff up a little bit. That way I know that when I go to the other side, it's not pulling them too. So you also want to make sure that as you do things, like on the other side, I pulled these in, but the problem is on this side, they're not. So we want to go ahead and do the same thing here that we did on the other side. And then we want to also go back into the sculpt mode and raise some of this stuff up. Now we have that. I want to pull this out. I like to do all this rough shaping in the lowest res possible. There's a lot less stuff to move around. But one thing that you'll notice is as I pull these out, I'm losing all that detail. Another thing that we want to do is we want to pull these back. So this is what I meant by you're losing detail in each of these areas. See here? See how I pushed that way down? I'll just zoom in, go into sculpt mode, and pull them up like that. Because the sculpting is going to move it along the normal. So it'll go in the right direction. And you don't have to worry about, it's not view dependent, so you don't have to worry about that. So then essentially the last thing that I want to show is once I've moved stuff around like that, and I'll do the same on the rest of it, but I just want to show this real quick and then I'll end this video, is I'll just go through and I will split these on both sides. So after you split them, then you can move things around. Should have pulled these in, but we'll do this real quick. And then I'll show the last thing that I wanted to show. So once you've split things and you have them like that, the next thing that I would do is, these are all really straight and you don't want that. So I would just go through, hold down Alt, select my edge loop, get the angle right, and start pulling these into the shape that I want for when I'm sculpting. As you can see here, I did that. And then after you've done each one, then you're just pretty much going to come in and then you're going to add volume to these. Do the same thing on this side. And then you would add your multi-res after all this is done, do a little bit more sculpting on it, and then you call it finished. And that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.